Hi, everyone. Welcome to Run, Walk, Talk, Tales of Inclusion and Development. I'm Steph and my pronouns are she and her. And I'm here with Judy and our pronouns are she and her. And we are really excited to welcome a guest to our podcast today, Megan McAllister, who will be discussing her role as a professional coach and leadership development facilitator, and how a coach can not only help leaders develop their own skills, but also make teams better. So big welcome, Megan. So excited you're here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I think, both Steph and I have used coaches at various times in our respective careers, and we've really found it incredibly helpful to our own growth. And I think in the spirit of full disclosure, we've also both worked with you, Megan, and we've really benefited from your amazing coaching style. So thank you.
Yeah.
And before we dive in, just to give you a little bit of background about Megan. So Megan, in addition to being a professional coach, you are also a leadership development facilitator, and you are on a mission to build better workplaces, leaders, careers, and lives. And your sweet spot is really working with progressive leaders and organizations in more traditional industries. Your specific area of focus in leadership and coaching work includes coaching others in building more professional empowerment, personal effectiveness, emotional intelligence, and psychological safety for teams and for individuals. You are a certified leadership coach. You hold a CPHR designation and a Bachelor of Business Administration, and you've really taken extensive coursework in topics related to leadership effectiveness, mindfulness, mental health awareness, and psychological safety. And you were an executive level HR leader for one of the world's largest law firms. And I love that your core values are impact, growth, connection, and joy. And you actually do key performance indicators for your values. And I love that one of them is you counting the time that you spend laughing as one of the most important personal key performance indicators. So love that. Now we might as well dive right in as usual. So Steph, I'll let you get us started.
Yeah, let's do this. Okay, so why don't we start kind of with the basics? Megan, can you tell us about what you do as a coach and what's a day in the life look like for you?
Sure. So the formal definition of coaching is that you're partnering with your clients in a creative and thought-provoking process, and it's all about unlocking personal and professional potential. If I were to put that in my own words, I would say that coaching conversations should feel like really different types of conversations. Coaching conversations are providing a safe space that a lot of leaders, frankly, don't get, and a space where a coach is holding space in a really sort of deep way, like using skills of active listening, deep listening, reflective inquiry, the types of conversations that don't happen day to day, and where as a coach you're completely objective, you're not a mentor, you're not a boss, you don't have any skin in the game with respect to the topics that are being talked about. So coaching is a really different kind of conversation. Hopefully the clients feel like it's a special kind of conversation, one that's different than what they normally get in the workplace. A day in the life of, this probably looks different on any given day, but I'll think about today and maybe reflect on a day in the life of a coach today. Something that's really important to me is my own sort of grounding practices. As a coach, we're oftentimes holding space for other people, and we need to be really grounded in order to do that. So having a set of self-care practices and grounding practices so that I can bring my best to coaching conversations and make sure that I'm grounded and regulated so that I can hold space for my clients. So my day will start with some sort of ritual around meditation and gratitude and just sort of getting me into the space that I need to be in for my clients. One-on-one coaching sessions, so meeting over Zoom with clients. Generally, we're talking about topics that are related to, how we lead ourselves, our relationship to work, how we lead others, be it our teams, our colleagues, managing up, influencing change. All those sorts of topics come up in coaching conversations. So there'll be, on any given day, I might have 1, 2, or 3 one-on-one coaching conversations, probably not much more than that. Today I had one. And I'd also probably be doing some work on sort of like group coaching and leadership development. So I'll work with teams, leadership teams, and we'll do different workshops on leadership topics and one-on-one coaching. So I might be doing some prep around that. Does that give you a good sense of the day in the life of? Yeah,
it does. It does. I really, going back to sort of your definition, I really love that sort of partnering and unlocking that potential piece. So that was really, really, really powerful. Yeah.
Well, and I think that leads really nicely into our next question for you, Megan, which is, how can coaching transform the leadership styles of leaders within an organization? And I think, if you could maybe tell us about an instance where you saw coaching really change the leader's approach.
Yeah. I mean, I think the potential for coaching to transform styles is huge, and there's lots of different examples I could draw upon. There's scenarios where you have a new manager that's feeling uncertain about some of their skill sets, and coaching can really help them tap into their strengths and build their confidence and help them maximize the impact that they have on others. There's coaching situations where you're coaching a leader that maybe at one point was really engaged in their career and excited about their career and is experiencing overwhelm and burnout, and it's impacting them personally and professionally, and maybe even impacting their team as well. And you can see through coaching that they're able to get a better sense of grounding and tap back into their sense of resourcefulness and agency. There's also some situations with coaching where you can see that a person's entire paradigm for what leadership looks like really changes. I'm thinking right now of a particular client who came to me and was looking for some support in building foundational leadership skills. And the context was, seeing some behaviors that didn't really sit super well with him in his workplace, that he wasn't really, decisions that were being made that weren't really aligning with who he was as a leader. And through our work together, I think what was really revealed and what was really transformative for him was there's a lot that we can learn about in a book around leadership, right? There's like the frameworks and the knowledge that we acquire through books. And then there's taking circumstances that are oftentimes less than ideal, people that we're in conflict with, decisions that we don't agree with, ways of being in organizations that don't align with the way that we are, and using those experiences as a way to practice being the leader that we want to be. The particular example that I'm sharing right now, that felt like a really transformative shift for my client, and that by the end of our work together, I think he really understood leadership to be not something that we only learn about, but something that we practice, and that we practice when things are particularly like tough and challenging and sticky. Those are oftentimes some of our biggest lessons.
Well, and I love that you go to the real practical, because we love books and we love to read. And it's so true. You can read something in a book, but there's other tools that you will want to have at your disposal, like coaching, that can give you some guidance through a tough situation, and really, as you said, a partner, so that you can walk through a situation together, and you're really probably guiding a person in finding their own answer in many cases to an issue that they're having.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, lots of great nuggets. Thank you so much, Megan. We're gonna turn to the topic of psychological safety in the workplace. We, Judy and I did this topic. We dedicated an episode back in July of 2023. And so we know you're also very interested in, on what psychological safety is and a role that it creates of creating a healthy and innovative workplace. So tell us, what are the key strategies that leaders can implement to create and maintain a psychological safety in their team? What can they do? What have you seen?
Yeah. So when you ask me this question, I first think about like self-leadership in terms of how we show up. That's the first thing that comes to mind. So I think about a leader having, the bravery to develop self-awareness around the way that they come across and the impact that they have on others. The bravery to look at what some of their blind spots might be. I think when it comes to psychological safety, I like to think most people aren't intending to show up in an unsafe way, but maybe we are, right, through things that are outside of our awareness. So that would be the first thing that I would say, is a bravery around sort of looking at ourselves and getting curious around the impact that we have on others. Another thing that I think of is having an awareness of power and privilege, right? So how our titles, our ability to influence within the organization, and other dimensions of privilege that we might experience, getting curious around how that impacts us and how we show up, and whether other people might have a different experience. So being really aware of those dynamics and not turning a blind eye to them in terms of how we can create psychological safety for others. On a really practical level, listen more and talk less. Recognize that as a leader, you are influencing in a lot of ways, and people might hold back around you, especially if you have power and influence within an organization. So that's a pretty simple thing that all of us can do to send a powerful message around wanting to lead more inclusively.
And I think that is just, Judy, just totally counterintuitive than the way sort of the traditional leadership model has been, right?
Totally.
It's like the leader is there, they speak, they share their knowledge, whereas really leaders today need to be listening way more.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
agree, Steph. And one of my colleagues always says she thinks the higher that you're moving up the corporate ladder, the quieter and more silent you should be, the more you should be listening in a meeting. And I try and keep that in mind, because I think that's absolutely what you're speaking of, both of you, with that listening is so key and so critical. So if the psychological safety, so somebody realizes that, they're self-aware, they realize that maybe there's some things that they've been doing that are really detrimental to psych safety on their team, what are some things that they can do to rebuild it with their team?
Cool. So you're talking a bit about trust being betrayed, which can be a challenging thing to overcome. I think the first thing that I would recommend is getting really curious around the impact that they've had, right? And this can require even a sense of compassion with ourselves, right? So, and even a sense of humor for our humanity, like the way that we show up and the way that we impact other people, even when we don't mean to. So getting curious about the impact that we have on others, with a sense of compassion for ourselves, so that we're not sort of beating ourselves up around this stuff, so that we're getting curious about it. I think that creating that safety within ourselves creates a much better place from which to change and do things differently. We can think about the basics of empathy and putting ourselves in the shoes of other people, right? So what would it feel like to be a member of our team? What are the behaviors that we notice in our team when we walk into a room? Do people all of a sudden get quiet and shut down? So getting really curious and noticing, really being on alert to the behaviors that we see in other people. Maybe even getting some help via a coach or trusted colleagues, right? So, hey, I have the sense that maybe I've been showing up in some ways that aren't particularly effective. I really want to change that. And I really need someone who's going to be honest with me and tell it to me straight. So that could be a coach, or that could be a colleague that you trust with that conversation. And I think giving things time, when we're changing and when we're looking to have people acknowledge that we have changed, it sometimes takes time, right? If people have seen a certain behavior in you, they probably have a bias to look for that behavior. So if that trust has been betrayed, you probably do have a bit of an uphill battle in terms of earning that trust back. So it's going to take time, and it's going to take intention and curiosity and awareness and willingness to try new and different things, to signal that things are different.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Yeah, I'd like to sort of switch and talk about a bit of balance when it comes to leaders, because as leaders, moving up the ladder and, trying to find that balance between sort of asserting authority and showing that vulnerability, again, sort of the traditional models of leadership hasn't really shown kind of that to be vulnerable, right? So how do you guide leaders to navigate sort of this balance effectively between this authority and vulnerability? And how do you think kind of it impacts the team and then the health of the organization?
Yeah. When I think about leadership, I don't think leading by authority works. I think about leading by influence. And in terms of that balance around vulnerability, I mean, every leader has to decide like what's authentic to them in terms of how vulnerable they want to be. So I guide a leader to think about what's comfortable for them, what's authentic to them in terms of how vulnerable they want to be. I will say that I think in my experience is that humans connect with other humans. So I think if you're willing to be a bit more vulnerable and connect on a human to human level, besides like titles, I think that's going to go a long way. In terms of leadership and the impact that it can have on an organization, I mean, it makes all the difference, right? You can't manage discretionary effort out of people, right? You can't manage people giving the best of their hearts and their minds and their effort. You can only inspire that. And I think that happens by a leadership style that's much more inspirational and visionary, and that's relying a lot more on influence and the basics of how humans connect than it is on that top-down sort of authoritative leadership style of the past.
Well, thank you for that. I think there's a lot of really interesting nuggets in everything that you've just shared. And I'm just sort of reflecting. I think we're both probably taking a moment just to sort of take in everything that Megan has said. And I think, if you can think of a book, if there, people are listening and they want to sort of build on what you've been describing, do you have a book that you typically recommend, or do you have a favorite book that sort of takes in all of these things you've been sharing?
I'm looking over to the side because I have a stack of books right beside me, and I was like, which one would I choose? Multipliers by Liz Wiseman is one of my favorites. One of the reasons why I love Multipliers is it talks about, the essence of leadership being around like unlocking and multiplying talent and helping people achieve things that are like more and better than what they even, thought that they were capable of. So there's this aspect of it that's just so inspiring when it talks about the impact that great leadership can have. But the other part of it that I really love is it talks about diminishing qualities. So the behaviors that we can have as a leader that, don't bring out the best in others or diminish their effort. And it talks about these diminishing qualities through the lens of accidental diminishers. And I think what that speaks to is the fact that many of us have these qualities around leadership that can be less than effective, that we need to be really careful of and mindful of. But we don't have them because we're like a jerk or a bad person, right? Like we're just an imperfect human being who gets caught up in our own insecurities, egos, habits, whatever it is. So I think the model, really makes it safe for us to reflect on what some of those accidental diminisher qualities are. And I think, again, that safety can become the space from which we change and are inspired to do better.
Well, and I love it too, because people, like you said, people aren't trying to be jerks, and often people don't even realize certain behaviors that they have and that they're things that they're saying. And so in multipliers, they just might see something, go, oh, I think that might be me. That might be something that I need to shift.
Yeah, if your cheeks start getting like hot when you're reading it, you know that's probably one of your accidental diminisher qualities. Yeah,
the sign. Okay, good to know. Good to know. It is definitely on my list for this year. Well, Megan, on behalf of Judy and I, thank you so much. This was a really great conversation to discuss your coaching, how to be a more inclusive leader. We will definitely post your information in the notes. But big thank you, and until next time.
Thank you. Real honor to be here. I had a lot of fun too.
Great.
Thank you.